Buenos dias. We are honored and privileged to have been able to meet so many of you this week and to learn more about Uruguay and about Uruguay education, and especially about what you're doing to help your children be global citizens and to work with the rest of us around the world in making sure that the life that they have is the one that they want. We know that around the world, our students can connect with one another across the globe as easily as they can connect with a child down the street. And we know that the world that they're entering is very complex. It is a digital world. It gives them wonderful opportunities. And what we want to do is make sure that they are as prepared as possible for that. And that does mean that there are changes in every aspect of our lives and for them as well. So when we think about that, sometimes people say, well, do I really have to change? I know these things are happening, but do I have to change? And I think one way to get them to perhaps want to is to start to think about the possibilities. So we're going to look at a very short video, and while you're watching, just think about what inspires you as you watch this, or what do you think the possibilities might be for the children of Uruguay?
Imagine the awesomest thing you can, like an automatic grilled cheese maker, or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheese maker. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her? But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is heavy. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling, because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better, forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're gonna need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
So I'm interested to hear one or two things that you discussed about the video. Be brave. What excited you? What does it make you think it's possible? Yes.
Que lo que me quedó a mí del video que son más importantes las preguntas que las respuestas.
Yes. Questions are more important than answers. It means we teach differently. We don't want to teach the answers because they can find them on Google. So we need to teach them how to look for answers in an intelligent way, how to analyze the information that they find. One other idea.
Schools look like places where students want to be and are having fun doing interesting things.
And they're doing interesting things and they're having fun because we're challenging their thinking. I think that children get bored when they have nothing difficult to do, and that they will work very, very hard if it is something that matters to them, and you could see some visions of that. So that's what we're talking about. One thing we've noticed is that in Uruguay you are extremely creative, and that you are already moving in this direction of engaging your students in new and different ways of learning. So we're going to now turn to how you are part of this much larger global partnership in working at pulling our world together around learning for kids.
And so along with Uruguay, we have 6 other countries and around 1,000 schools who are engaged in this work. Australia and New Zealand, Finland, the Netherlands, the USA and Canada. A true global network, sharing language, building understandings together, trying new ways of working, and most importantly, collaborating and talking about those new ways of working, analysing what's successful, what we can do better. A global partnership of 1,000 schools, a powerful, powerful partnership. What is it that we do? We look at teaching practices, we look at leadership practices, we look at learning practices. We look for the threads that connect the most powerful teaching, learning, and leadership practices, and we share those, and we work on improving those even more. Our purpose? To foster deep learning for all learners, enabling them to meet global challenges so that they can flourish in today's different world. Some very important words there. All learners, every learner, every classroom, every system. The notion of contributing to challenges that are bigger than just in their own backyard. Challenges that are meaningful. Challenges that connect all of us around the globe. And finally, the idea of the word flourish. Flourish. Not just exist, not just be, not just learn, but be able to apply that learning, that thinking, that understanding beyond the classroom. And in a sense, beyond the academic. So we are developing character traits. We are developing the core skills that are more than just reading, writing, and literacy. They are always important. They will always be important. They will always be critical. But this is about developing the whole child in a holistic way, so that we have young people who grow into the leaders of tomorrow and are comfortable in those shoes and are capable in those shoes and in the world that is coming.
So when we came together, 7 countries, and Uruguay was the first to step forward and to be a member of this, we thought we're going on a journey together and we're going to explore this whole notion of deep learning, what it is and how we get it. So the very first step was to define what we meant. We had a fuzzy idea, this idea, but what did it really mean? What would teachers do in classrooms that would be different? What would principals, directors do that would be different? What would leaders of an education system do that would be different? And so we started out with defining deep learning as 6 competencies, and I know you are familiar with them, but they were very important because they allowed us to have a framework for talking to one another within our own countries and across our countries. And many of them are 21st century skills, the first 4: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. We've been talking about them for a very long time as 21st century skills. We have never done a very good job of measuring them. So that was one difference. The second one is we added 2 additional ones, and those are character and citizenship. Because in today's world, it is really important that we help our young people develop empathy and perseverance and be lifelong learners. All this inner quality that will help them be successful in life. But it's also important in our society, which now connects across the globe so much more, that we build citizenship as well, so that we are contributing in our own area, our own community, our own country, but also that we are tackling some of the big problems, such as sustainability and feeding the world, and some of the things that are in your global challenge that you are just launched this week on Monday. So we want to incorporate the whole child, as Max has said. Sorry, clicked too soon. So we wanted to share another look at what this looks like for teachers and for students as we think about what these 6 C's do when we use them in classrooms. And so on this video, you're going to see another colleague from our team. Her name is Deidre Butler. She lives in Ireland. So we're going all over the world this morning. And she's going to talk a little bit and show you just glimpses of some classrooms so that you'll start to see what's happening in other countries.
What are the 21st century skills? It's not that these skills are different from skills that were required in the past. We did need to be able to build knowledge and problem solve, but now everybody needs to be able to do that and do it at a deep level. The teacher's role isn't the omnipotent God, and they shouldn't be the font of all knowledge. They can't be. They are actually learning professionals. They can actually design learning environments to engage students. If we live in a society that's constantly changing, well then knowledge is not fixed, it's dynamic all the time, and we have to actually keep moving, and we have to keep learning and relearning. And the biggest asset we can actually have is the ability to learn how to learn and to actually adapt to change.
The amount of information available to students today is on a scale that we've never seen before. There are skills that they need to be able to deal with that and incorporate them properly into their daily lives is a justification for 21st century skills.
The changes that are important in education, I believe, are the way we look at knowledge, the way we understand the need of knowledge in the future.
The important changes are also connected to society, and society today is society with technology.
It's a global, connected world now. We're going to have really complex problems to solve. So we need people that are skilled communicators, expert thinkers, and people who are very good on collaboration and problem solving.
When we look at the requirement for critical thinking, problem solving, analysis and so on, those are the skills that employers are looking for.
The fact that after years of focusing very hard on subject and subject matter, we need to sort of widen the scope and try to see things from a different view, which is more sort of broad without subjects and more sort of core skills.
Rather than being restricted to a text-based approach all the time, there's a multimodal approach to my meaning making that makes sense for me, and that needs to be built and wrapped around the content and approach in schools. Everybody can learn at their own pace and with their own styles.
We live in a very different world from even 1 or 2 generations ago. Developing 21st century skills is going to give them some of the abilities that they'll need to manage in the modern world.
It's not going to be easy, but at least if we have that mindset that things are not fixed and have complex learning environments where students are in charge of their own learning and have ownership, and that they will be empowered or even passionate about going back and saying, yes, we're going to instigate change, that things need to change, and that they can be creative about how they can go about that change.
So would you please turn to someone nearby and talk about what really stood out for you when you watched that video? I know for me there were a couple of words that just really grabbed my attention. Okay, 2 minutes. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask you to share some of the ideas that you've talked to your friend about that were important to you in the video. Yes. Yes, it is scary at first for teachers.
Yeah, and we see that we still want everybody doing the same thing at the same time. Mm-hmm. We feel we are in control. We feel that they are learning. And then we have the, syllabus to cover, mm-hmm. exams to be passed. So it's kind of difficult to do that, differentiated learning, for instance. And I mean, I'm working at Formación Docente, teaching, training.
Yes.
And we are not really tackling that. So our students will be, our trainees won't be very familiar with that. So that's why.
And it's difficult for teachers all over the world, not just here. And what we have found works is, we call them baby steps, small steps. So we don't think they're going to go from where they are to that quickly, not overnight, but take one lesson that I'm going to teach tomorrow anyway, and sit down with a colleague and say, how could I take one of those competencies and use that to make this lesson deeper? So perhaps I can have the students think more critically, or I can have them work in pairs to build collaboration. So it's one step at a time. But we think that having at least the idea of the competencies in our mind helps us be more intentional about what we do in the classroom. And step by step, we get closer. And students, at first it's scary, but then once you see what they are capable of, it's such a big help. I mean, they really can add so much. Another idea that you liked. You can speak in Spanish? I understand perfectly now. I have a close friend. Yes, after a week. Max, did you see anything in there you liked?
One of the phrases that Deirdre used was about knowledge not being fixed. And if knowledge is evolving, then we have to adapt our practices to allow that knowledge to evolve itself and to help the students evolve that knowledge. So things that may have been true and stable and static for us as we were growing up, there is every chance now that they lack, or they have much less relevancy. And that static, that notion of fixed knowledge and one point in time, and I've learnt it and that's finished, put it aside now. That's something that is not as current. It has less currency, certainly, than it did when I was growing up.
So we need to teach them how to learn for life. And we've talked about it, but those are really important skills. How to ask good questions, how to analyze, how to synthesize information are more important skills than just how to memorize. We still need all the basics, as Max said. They need to read, they need to write, they need all the basic concepts, but they have to apply them now. So we're asking students to do more.
I think you've just tweaked my memory there, Joe, too. Andreas Schleicher, PISA, OECD, uses a great phrase. In 2016, it's no longer about what you know, it's about what you do with what you know. Short statement. For me, that was profound, and it summarizes a lot of our thinking and our work around that so beautifully.
So we said that we use these 6 global competencies, that when students possess these, we feel that they are able to learn deeply, as a way to define what we were looking for. But we knew it wasn't enough. It was a start. It gave a definition, but it didn't tell us still how to do this. And it wouldn't help us know if we got there. So what we did was, next we developed a tool called a learning progression. And there's one of these for each of those C's. And this is just an example of collaboration and just the top part of it. And what's important is that we came up with dimensions, and there are 5 different dimensions for collaboration. And then we described what it would look like when a student was at the very beginning stages and when they were very proficient. And we did this because it becomes a tool that teachers can use to have good conversations with one another about many things. First of all, where are our students now? How proficient are they? The descriptions that are in each of these cells give you ideas about what to do. If my student is at limited, when I read this, I think this is what they need to move to here. So when you read both, you know how to design better learning. At the end of the learning, they're also useful to say, this is where we began in March. We've done many things. I've assessed my students many times. When I look at all of that progress, have they moved? Are they now able to be here or here? So it helps us be more precise in our design of the learning and also our assessment of the learning. The one other thing that it really does that is helpful is that it's a catalyst for teachers to come together and build a common language. And we are now just designing these for students as well, so that they can use them for self-assessment. And this is probably the part that is most different. Around the world, everybody is talking about 21st century learning. But this is one of the big differences, is that we are actually focusing attention and giving you tools to design and measure together. So we hope that, and we know that you have already started using them, and people who were with us this week in the room and practiced using these, put your hands up so people can see who you are. Okay, quite a few of you. You were there? Yes. We did this, and in 45 minutes, we had a very, very good analysis of student work, where we rated the work. We all agreed on what it was, and I think everyone said it was very productive and helped them feel very professional about making those kinds of judgments. One last thing, just going back here, the other reason that we have identified these is that we need to be intentional. That's how we build that precision. I always wanted my students to be creative. I always wanted them to be good communicators and problem solvers. But I got so busy sometimes thinking about English or math or biology that you're not thinking about it. So these become, it's like putting on your glasses. They become a lens through which I can look at teaching my history or look at teaching my mathematics and say, when I'm teaching my math concepts, how can I be sure that they are critically thinking? Is there a way we could use this math and build some creativity? So you don't use them all the time, but you're intentionally making sure that over the time you have your students, you are developing these capacities. And once we do that, then comes the real job. Even if we agree and we think this is a great idea, how do we help teachers to move forward?
So in order to build and support learners who are creative and collaborative, of strong integrity and character, who are active global citizens, what we call new pedagogies come into play. So there are 4 core elements, if you like, that help us specify and plan and think and break down and analyse our work to build the 6 C's in learners. The first is the new pedagogies themselves, the things that we do in our classroom and how we do them. The word new is sometimes misleading because all of us in our classrooms employ some practices, some teaching methods that are fantastic, that get great results, that do exactly what we need them to do when we need them to do it. But there are some emerging pedagogies, some emerging practices and ways of working, lots of them spurred on by technology itself, that are new. There are new opportunities, and opportunities like never before for our learners to communicate and to collaborate through time and space. There are opportunities to think about different ways of teaching and learning as we learn more about the brain, neuroresearch, as we understand how learners develop more and more. So as our knowledge moves from fixed to growing around all of those things, they provide opportunities for us to work in new ways, new pedagogies. The second area is, Joe, what's the translation of that second one? Partnerships, learning partnerships. So we talk about a new partnership between and among learners, teachers, teachers and teachers, teachers, learners, parents and community. All now because of the connectivity we have can play a very important role in the way learners learn. So you've heard us talking about connecting to other teachers through our collaborative global network. In the same way, students can connect. But one of the important aspects of learning partnerships is the way and the emphasis on teachers knowing their learners very well. Teachers being able to converse and knowing where each person, each young learner in their classroom is, where they are on those learning progressions, and what we need to do as teachers to shift them to the next stage. So technology also allows us to provide feedback, to observe, to change the way learners learn in so many ways. Learning partnerships, extraordinary, important part of our new pedagogies. The learning environment, the third one. There are a couple of different subsets here. So there, when we think about learning environment, traditionally we think about classroom or school. We think about perhaps the culture in that school, how the principal and how the teachers interact with learners, what is allowed, what is encouraged, what is not allowed, perhaps. So there's the classroom and the school climate. And there's also the environment, we talked about the holistic development of the learner. So it's how the learner feels, how he or she is connected to that environment. The environment that includes her peers and her teachers. So there are a number of different focus areas when we look at and work with schools. We ask questions so that we can establish what your learning environment might look like. And we can establish, much like using the rubrics that come with the 6 C's, where we are now, where we would like to be, and then formulate some strategies about how we might get there. The final aspect of, the final element of our new pedagogies and contributing to deep learning is technology, the digital, all pervasive. There is no chance that 10 years ago Ramon would sit here with a camera that small on a tripod and be able to produce high definition television broadcast almost quality video. And yet today we don't think anything of it. And our learners and our students certainly don't think anything of it. My daughter is 10 and a half years old. She is a true digital native. She has never known an analog telephone. Daddy, what's that? But strangely enough, she wanted a typewriter. She wanted an old-fashioned typewriter. There was something romantic about typing on the keys and seeing them come up. So that lasted 2 days and it's now in the cupboard. But technology, as a great enabler, as an amplifier, as an accelerator, and as a connector of learners and learning, again, offers us so many opportunities to build that depth of learning in our classroom and in each one of our learners.
So the next step, as we said, is always how do we help people to change their practice? So we think the 6 C's are a touchstone. Everyone can understand them. The progressions help us think more clearly about them. Having this description of 4 things we can consider when we design our learning helps us analyze what we're doing and make little changes. So it's an organizer that helps us, as we combine these, create deeper learning. But we felt that as a global partnership, that we wanted to put together a whole system of tools that we thought would be helpful. The first one is a process. And this is a process called, I was going to try it in Spanish, but collaborative inquiry. And it's based on the notion that we will get better if we work together. But to do that, we have to work in a focused way, not just sit and talk about anything. So the process is that as teachers, we would come together and look at where are our students. So we assess that. What are they interested in? But also, what is the curriculum that we must teach? You know, what are the big ideas, the concepts that our students need? And then we use those 4 elements that we just talked about to make a really good learning design. And then we teach, but here's a different part. When we get to this section, after the students have completed their work, we look together at that set of work, and we use the progression to say, have they made progress? And the difference is we're asking people, not every single day, but at cycles throughout the year, to do that together. So it may be someone who teaches the same subject that you teach. It may be a small group of teachers. It may be even teachers who teach 2 or 3 different subjects coming together to do a particular theme or topic. But what we have found is we have a statement, we say, use the group to change the group. And what happens is, as we work together, we solve problems. If I had a bit of difficulty, you probably have an idea that will help me to do it in a different way. And so at this stage, we say the next time we work with our students, what will we need to do to move them to the next level? And so we ask that teachers who engage in this do this a minimum of 2 times in a year, minimum. The reason for that, if you only do it once, will make 0 difference. By the time you've done it the second time, you see this really helps. You know, it's a lot of work the first time because you're not used to it, but by the second time, you're sort of starting to see that it works. I think given the experience that we had over the last 2 days with practicing this, I believe that once teachers have learned that, they might want to do it once a month, 5 or 6 times a year. And if they do that, they will become much, much better. They will think about their teaching in a different way, and their students will as well. So we also have 3 sets of tools. We've talked about the 6 C's, the global competencies. They're for design, for monitoring, for measurement. We have other tools that allow us to design the learning. And then we have another 3rd set of tools that help us look at organization. So we have one for schools, we have one for the cluster that is supporting the group of schools, and we have one for your education system. And they are rubrics that allow the school or the system to take a look at themselves, self-assessment, and say, they have 8 dimensions. Do we have the right conditions in place to support teachers to make this change? And so you assess at the beginning of the time 1, and it helps you plan your priorities. And then at the end of the year, you look back and say, have we made any growth? So all of this is a growth mindset. It doesn't matter where we start as long as we are moving in the right direction. And we can then measure those changes. Additional supports.
Joe, you just took a word that I would like to use. Just, can you help me? Just give me a wave if you know the term growth mindset. If you understand the term growth mindset. Okay. So a growth mindset is a way of thinking that says, I always learn. I want to learn. I want to keep learning, and I want to get better at what I do. Very positive mindset about improving. Joe and I have had the privilege this week of working with perhaps 25 educators from Plan Cebal. And we've been working through some modules, some workshops that deconstruct a lot of the things that we've been talking about this morning. And also talk through and work through how best to provide support to our teachers in our schools, to our principal leaders, to those who are interested in new pedagogies for deep learning. So we've worked with around 25 Plan Cebal educators this week, and it's been an absolute privilege. They brought a growth mindset. They were open to new ideas. They were prepared to engage in some work when you first look at it. That's a little bit scary and a little bit daunting and more than a little bit complex. But the conversations that we had were so rich and so open. We were prepared to ask questions and not just be told answers. So the levels of thinking, Joe and I appreciated the work that went into this week. We've also had the opportunity to meet with educational authorities at primary, secondary, UTU, and teacher education levels. And each one of those, in conversation, brought up some opportunities to take this work further. In each system, we could clearly identify different opportunities to build new pedagogies for deep learning. And one of the things that we've been talking about at system level, potentially, is how we connect the educators in each of those 4 areas so that we share common understandings, common language, and build on those opportunities so that learners in every system, every learner, every classroom has access to the supports, the teaching strategies, the methodologies and the resources that we've developed to build those 6 C's, those deep learning competencies. So Joe and I will leave Uruguay knowing much more than we did 6 days ago. It's been an incredible learning experience. We have made some great connections and some great friends, and we will continue to be in touch with all of the people that we've worked with this week to continue to build on some of the powerful practices that already exist and are exciting in your new pedagogies for deep learning schools.
And when we take a look at across the 7 countries that are working with us, what is it that we're trying to measure? What do we hope to impact as we move forward? And there are 3 key things that we're going to collect information from everyone to help us understand more clearly. The first of these is, what are these new pedagogical practices that make a difference? And so different countries will contribute their ideas. You're already working on many of these new pedagogies. And we want to share that information and identify it so other people can benefit, as well as throughout your own country. So we are going to have an organized way to share from teacher to teacher, across countries, good examples of things that are working so that we can all improve our practice. Use the group to change the group, and we will keep track of that. The second one is to improve the quality or professionalism, we would say, of teachers. By that we mean to treat them as a professional. And that collaborative inquiry that we talked about, we know that if people work together, they will get much better at what they do. They will build a common language, they will be more precise, and they will get better results. Don't want to go into the soccer, but if you have a team, you don't send them all to different rooms to practice their soccer skills and leave them there and come and check once a year. I mean, that would seem ridiculous. What do we do with teachers? Go to your room, get better, I'll come and see you sometime. What we need to do are provide opportunities for them to learn from one another, to have coaching from each other and from other people from outside, and we will all get better a lot faster. I think a soccer team gets better when they actually play together. They don't get so much better if they all go to different rooms and just practice the skills by themselves. So that's my metaphor for the day. So we think teachers are and leaders in education are what will make the difference. Technology is really important. It's not going to replace us. We need to be using our good thinking and problem solving to figure out how best to use that to leverage the learning. And thirdly, we are definitely going to look at the performance of our students. We know how they perform on our traditional measures. We are going to also measure how do they progress on those deep learning competencies. Because if any of you are parents or aunts or grandparents, you have young people in your lives, and if I said to you, what do you want for them? You are not going to say, to learn algebra. You're going to say to me, I want them to be able to think, to be successful, to be able to get along with people, to be happy in their life, to be able to contribute, to be good in society. Anywhere I've gone in the world for the last 20 years, that's what parents say to me. That's what teachers say to me. Well, now we're going to focus on that with these deep learning competencies. We're not going to hope that they happen. We're going to be intentional to make sure that they happen. So what have we been noticing as different countries have started to use new pedagogies for deep learning and use these competencies? Well, first of all, we think that there are sort of 3 phases. They are not years. They are simply aspects of what seems to happen. At the beginning, the important thing is to help people build a deep understanding of what do we mean by deep learning. What are these competencies? What do they look like in classrooms? What do they already look like in my classroom? So it's that building that understanding and also learning how to use the tools that we've talked about. So there's a lot of discussion and practice and examples and simulations. And we would ask that in that first phase, as I said, teachers try it at least 2 full units of learning, because they need enough to get a taste. Now, some people find at this stage that they need to be much longer. Some it's 6 months, some it's 18 months. There is no right or wrong. It depends on the size of your organization, how you begin. But also, when you start a new group in Uruguay, you started the first 100 schools. Now you're adding middle and high schools and technical schools. So therefore, they're going to have to start at the beginning and move forward. They'll actually move faster because they will have examples from the first group. The second phase is once we get a little comfort, we have to be very intentional, explicit about our leadership strategy and our capacity building plan. So that is where we see principals more involved with teams of teachers taking leadership inside the school and being supported by people from outside the school, so that it fits. It's part of what we're doing in our school. It's not for Principal, it's not a project. This is how we are looking at learning and teaching in our school, and so we are moving forward. And then what happens is we may go from, at the beginning, 5 teachers, 10 teachers are working on it, moving towards more and more teachers, deepening our knowledge as we move along. And they're using it more often, not just twice a year. They realize this helps me think through my teaching. I may not do it with my other teachers every time together, but I'm still thinking about those 6 C's whenever I'm working in the classroom. By the time we get to embed, accelerate, amplify, and we have some just in here where they are starting to think. We started, I'll give you an example. Near me, there is a city where I grew up. They have 104 schools in this city, and they started with 14 because they thought 14, we will start phase 1 and work for the first year. By the time they got to the second year, they said, we think all our teachers deserve to have access to this. So they have now gone to the whole 104 schools. But they're building it in, phase 1, phase 2. But they're saying this isn't a project, this is a new way of thinking about learning. And so they are increasing as they go. So at this stage, you've got a good plan, you start to have everyone thinking about thinking this way. That builds that focus, and you start to see much better results as this happens. Also, you get shared leadership. I already talked about in phase 2, we get more leadership by principals, more leadership by teachers. By the time we get to embedded and accelerating, everybody knows what their place is in this work and is contributing to it. We wanted to pull this together by sharing a video that many of you may have seen. This is a video we often use at the beginning of our workshops when we are in other countries, because we find that it contains everything we have been talking about. You will see these young people from your country demonstrating the 6 C's. I challenge you to see them using the 6 C's. You will see them being creative and listen to the words, because they will describe their learning and you will see what we're talking about. And you know, I believe that this started, this is the story I tell, it may not be true, but it works well, that this was a school and that they had some kits for robotics that had been delivered, and they were available in the school, and the students were very interested in them, but they weren't being used. And so they said to their teacher, you know, could we go into those kits? And the rest of it is what you will see here. They were interested, they were curious, and those students were agents of change in the school, along with a highly skilled teacher. So, enjoy.
siempre mirábamos los kits, pero no podíamos tocarlos ni nada, entonces le pedimos a la maestra para poder usarlos. Y ahí empezó todo, mirando videolecciones y construyendo cosas.
Las videolecciones es cuando, aprendimos por medio de videos del canal de YouTube de Ceibal.
Bueno, fue increíble. Ahí me sentí, dije, la tecnología acelera 100%, porque los chiquilines se encontraron con una videolección y clasificaron piezas del kit, lo armaron, lo programaron en 2 jornadas de 2 horas.
Nuestro próximo desafío es juntar la tecnología verde con los kits de robótica y poder hacer un robot que solucione un problema de la humanidad.
En mi clase hicimos con la maestra el tema de guerras mundiales y a mí se me ocurrió hacer un robot que detecte las minas.
Me parece importantísimo que ellos hayan pensado en una solución para nuestro planeta.
Este robot fue creado para la huerta. Este tiene un sensor de movimiento, cuando pasa algo por delante empieza a vibrar. Y entonces eso lo pondríamos ahí con una alarma. Y si pasa un pájaro que quiere comer las plantas, sonaría la alarma.
De que los mismos niños pueden sortear dificultades con mayor facilidad dentro de lo que es el manejo de la tecnología a lo que de repente puedo hacerlo yo.
Bueno, este proyecto que yo hice, con la maestra le pusimos Terminator, con una pila de 9 voltios, con un cepillo, con 2 vibradores Justin y con cables.
Vi que había ese intercambio con la casa, porque los chiquitos precisaban la ayuda de los papás, entonces ya estaban buscando qué iban a usar, qué no iban a usar.
Usamos un problema que había como nuestro barrio, claro, quisimos juntar, en vez de la humanidad, lo achicamos un poco a nuestro barrio, a nuestro Montevideo, nuestro barrio acá Malvin.
Y me asombré de que estaban apuntando a un problema real, que tenían conciencia ciudadana de lo que estaba pasando en este barrio.
En 2012, en la playa Malvin acá, murieron 5 personas porque cayó un rayo, y entre ellas un niño. Entonces lo que queremos evitar es que en el mundo, y en Uruguay, y especialmente en Uruguay, se termine este fenómeno, que no haya más, que no haya más muertes en las playas debido a rayos. Trata de que cuando va a caer un rayo te avisa 10 minutos antes, entonces empiezan a sonar las luces, empiezan a prender las alarmas. Claro, empiezan a sonar las alarmas, prenden las luces, la antena gira, el pararrayos, y cae el rayo y la playa ahí en ese momento estaría evacuada.
Mi vínculo es diferente. Los niños, podemos decir, somos socios.
Es como que con la maestra tenemos un mecanismo. Nosotros le proponemos los proyectos y ella nos ayuda a crearlos y mejorarlos.
Cambió la alianza de aprendizaje con mis alumnos.
Y nosotros se nos ocurrió la idea de evaluarlos, porque después teníamos que crear un grupo de niños que pudieran ayudar a ese grupo, que pudieran ayudar a otro grupo. Que nos ayudaran a nosotros a enseñarles a los demás.
Y en un momento yo me dije, maestra, podemos evaluarlos, porque lo que vemos es que algunos demoran más en esto, que otros tienen más facilidad de repente para entender la videolección que otros, pero que otros construyen más fácilmente, que otros programan más fácilmente. Y que bien, lo que podemos hacer es más o menos les traté de introducir al mundo de la rúbrica, de que podíamos hacer una rúbrica con los diferentes niveles y ver qué aspecto íbamos a evaluar mientras los niños estaban trabajando en robótica.
Lo que me gustó más fue la parte de evaluar, de poner los puntos y todo eso.
Y los alumnos están contentos, los niños están contentos. Cuando trabajás así, los niños están contentos.
En realidad estamos trabajando con el celular del futuro, que es lo que estamos haciendo para la red global.
Me pasó con el desafío global, estábamos, bueno, lo filmamos, ese día con tal de subir la idea usamos un teléfono, lo subimos, lo pasamos, ¿dónde lo pasamos? Bueno, pasámelo por mi cuenta, por Gmail, y terminó en donde tenía que estar.
No sé, yo siento que aprendí a cómo crear cosas para el futuro, de que los niños también pueden utilizar sus mentes para crear cosas para el futuro y que sean muy reutilizables y que no sea como tanto ahora que las cosas, tipo el medio ambiente está medio malo, y además que como la capa de ozono está rota, lo que queremos es que con estos celulares se vayan reconstruyendo y que ya no esté más ese agujero.
Y volví a escuchar una palabra de los niños que hacía años que no me pasaba, que era muchas gracias, maestra.
Sentí como que, no sé, lograste hacer algo.
Y estoy contenta con la red global, muy contenta, porque la inclusión de las nuevas pedagogías, esta teoría me enseñó a ver que eso de trabajar para afuera, de trabajar para el mundo, de comunicar, si bien yo tenía todo ese entusiasmo con la tecnología, a partir de que ingresé a la red global tuve una visión un poco más amplia de todo esto. Sí, me encantaría que todos los docentes vivieran esta experiencia.
So can anyone give me or share something that's become clearer? Something that's become clearer for you?
Well, it's just very short. What I mean to say, it's become clearer for me, the path we need to take. Although maybe full of uncertainty about the way we go about it, how we do it. But if we let ourselves be led by students, and we open ourselves to that, then it will become easier. So that's what become clearer for me.
Thank you. Thank you. And Joe used the phrase students as agents of change. They adapt quicker than we do. It takes courage to let them take the lead, but we've seen some examples of what happens when we do. Something else that's become clear?
En lo personal, lo que me queda más claro es que en realidad todo tiene que ver con la motivación, todo tiene que ver con aquellas cualidades que nos hacen más humanos. Y con el reconocimiento, el autorreconocimiento de sentirse capaces de generar cosas significativas en el mundo.
So self-awareness in our learners, motivation in our learners are critical parts and critical factors on the path to clarity and on the path to success. Thank you. One more?
It's my aerobics.
Thank you. There's a concept has been around for a while, that's empowerment. I saw that there, but not only the children, the teacher. She had things to do. She believed she could change things. And it moved me, really. It really moved me.
It's so powerful when the teacher said, I heard the words, thank you, miss.
And that's that partnership that we're talking about. The partnership between the teacher and the students, and also between the teacher, the students, and families. A minute? Are there any questions?
So, just questions as we draw to a...
Similar a lo que planteaba la compañera en relación a que estaban convencidos que podían generar un cambio. En verdad estaba pensando y comentábamos acá en relación a la disposición, es decir, la importancia de estar dispuestos a que algo de esto acontezca. Yo comentaba, yo veía las reacciones y lo que me pasaba con el video. Yo se lo he mostrado a muchos docentes y no siempre la reacción es positiva. Me dicen, todo esto lo hacemos y no se contactan con mucho de lo que está pasando ahí. Entonces creo que el gran desafío también es, hay gente que se entusiasma, que se compromete con esto, y hay otros que en verdad no tienen la disposición, y que igual nos toca trabajar con ellos porque tienen un montón de niños por los cuales tenemos que seguir trabajando.
Yes. Sí. Okay. So it's true, when we see a good example, sometimes we think I can't possibly do that. So we say, I already do that. Or they may think that they're already doing that. And if they're already doing that, let's get them together with her or people like her, because they can come up with even better things. So it's not a matter of are we or aren't we, it's where are we now, and how could we, by working together, get better. Another comparison might be if you have doctors who are learning to be better doctors, not just, they already are doctors, the surgeons, they go around as a team and they make rounds and they look at the patients and they talk about how well did this surgery turn out. And they learn from that, and they are very skilled professionals at the beginning. But you only stay that way, I think, if you keep improving. That's that growth mindset that Max is talking about. So we would love to answer more questions. Max is going to be hosting a blog on our public website. We will feature your stories as well as stories from the other clusters there. We invite you to come and find out more at all times, thinking about webinars and different ways that you can connect, and we're going to keep in very close touch with you as we move forward. A last word, Max?
It's been a privilege, as I said before, working, talking, thinking and learning with and from all of our new friends here in Uruguay. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to coming back and doing it all again at some stage.
Much success. Thank you.
Thank you.